Righto guys, welcome back to another video in the Neil Talks Football channel. I don't know if you can tell, but I am pretty happy right now. Life is sweet. Real Madrid dropped more points to Betis with a beautiful last second goal. It was probably the final kick of the game. And you just know I live for those hate watches. And I do think it's given me the motivation to sit down here and talk about the squad. We're all that much closer now to the title. We still have a job to do. Lots of very difficult fixtures, including the Classico coming up. But I do think it's that time of the season where we can sit here and make judgments, make assessments. And I just thought I'd do this old-fashioned, make a bit of a report card. We've all been there. We know how it works. I'm going to be grading everyone in the squad, bar a few, which I will get into, from F to A+. And I do hope that you agree. It's going to be good fun. Get involved in the comments. Now, before we begin, guys, I do take my job extremely seriously. I consider myself a teacher here, and we do have to set some ground rules so that you know where I'm coming from, and this video is clearer going forward. First of all, this is standardized. So by that I mean my grades, my assessments are not going to be relative to who the player is. Rather, it is simply based on their performances this season. So, for example, there are times when you tend to rate a younger player or a player who has potential, a player who hasn't been given enough opportunity or hasn't played in the right role. Basically, when the context is adverse, you tend to rate them more favorably. But in this case, I think it's just important to talk about those aspects, but also rate the players simply based on their performances this season. And that is what I'm going to do because it has to be standardized. Secondly, it's also very important to only talk about players who we have enough context and hindsight on. So we need to know how much they've played and how well they've played. And I was thinking about a good baseline for this, and I think 10 full 90s at least is a good baseline to go by. So 900 minutes or more. I am not going to be rating players who've played less than 900 minutes. That wouldn't be fair to you. It wouldn't be fair to me. It wouldn't be fair to the players. So the players who missed out are Szczesny, Cancelo, Christensen, Gavi, Bernal, and Rooney. Of course, also the La Masia lads like Joffre and Javier Aspat, but that goes without saying. Now that that's out of the way, without further ado, we get into the video. I'm starting off with my D's. So I haven't given anybody an F. I think that would be a bit harsh given the fact that, you know, we are on our way to a comprehensive La Liga title. We reached the quarterfinals of Champions League, as disappointing as that was. I do think that F would be harsh. So we start off at D, and I'm going to kick this off with Ronald Araujo. Now, we know the context with Araujo this season. He has suffered mental health issues. He had to basically take a break and drop everything in the middle of the season, which is so rare to see. I think the club handled it very well, and I'm also happy to see Araujo coming back and playing more, you know, Flick giving him that faith again in certain games. But in terms of performances, I want to preface this by saying there are a good few years where Araujo made me so confident, so happy. He was almost impenetrable at the back. You know, those years under Xavi where he was just that guy. You know, he's a beast. You couldn't get past him. He was the 1v1 specialist. He would dominate the box, dominate the air, dominate those 1v1 duels. We saw those battles with Vinicius, who's probably one of the best footballers in the world at the time, and there's a gameness about him. You know, he was always so content to insert himself physically, never hid, took responsibility. I think he almost went an entire season without getting dribbled past. And now when I look at the version of Araujo that we've got, he just seems a bit lost, you know, trying to find his way back, trying to become what he was, because he's still young, he's still in his prime, but something isn't quite right. And I want to make an observation here. Now, I think people think that a high line mandates being fast, being strong, being physical, and Araujo is all those things. But I believe that sometimes players with incredibly immense physical attributes, that inherent physicality and dominance, become almost content being correctors rather than preventers. By that I mean, because they've been so accustomed to getting bailed out by their recovery speed or their physical dominance, they often don't develop the intelligence necessary to employ a system that runs on very fine margins. We've also seen this with the likes of Mickey van der Ven at Spurs. These footballers who are so dominant, they lack the IQ necessary for a system like the high line where the margins are just the thinnest it could be. And in systems like these, sometimes what actually bails you out or what actually carries you is your intelligence, right? That's why you look at a defender who's been one of our most successful in the Hansi Flick era, and it's Inigo Martinez. It's a defender who's in the twilight of his career, who was not fast, not strong, not tall, not particularly dominant, physically at least in terms of his stature, but who had the intelligence, who had the awareness and the foresight, the awareness and the foresight to prevent being in danger rather than correct situations of adversity. And I think Araujo is a victim of the high line, or at least struggles in the high line, because he lacks the foresight and that inherent IQ that I think you only get when you lack those physical traits. So it's a very interesting one. This is just a theory, of course. I could be wrong and Araujo might start dominating the high line, but I do think that there is something about just the composition of how footballers play the game to this. Next up in the D category, guys, is Marc Casado. I think Casado is one of those players who's just been a bit meh this season. The Casado who broke through last year, especially in the first half of the season, was different because I never felt like he was hiding. I always felt like he had that bit of tenacity, that flair to him where he'd insert himself into the game, where he's very good as a circulator, but where he really stood out was off the ball. And he complemented someone like Pedri really well. But this year, I think he's stagnated or even regressed to the point where he isn't doing the things that set him apart. And he's kind of just a passenger every time I've seen him play. Of course, he's just scraped the 900-minute mark. But I think what really adds perspective to this is that Hansi Flick has basically only turned to Casado when he's had literally no other options available. He's even alluded, or he's even turned to Eric Garcia, who's not a midfielder, ahead of Marc Casado, just because Casado's looked like such a shadow of what he was 18 months ago. So it is a strange one because he is a young player and he did show promise early on, but I'm concerned that this is more a regression to the mean rather than a regression to a player he's not. And I do think that this summer would be a good time to cash out because La Masia is always going to produce exceptional midfielders. And if you look at the academy, that there are already players coming through who could probably do a job just as good as, if not better, than the current version of Casado. Next up, guys, is a player I don't like talking about in this way. Is someone who's always been my favourite footballer, one of my favourite footballers at least. It's Jules Koundé. I followed Koundé since he first made his debut in La Liga multiple years ago. He instantly came in and established himself as one of the very best defenders in Spain. Of course, he played centre-back at Sevilla, was the best centre-back in the league. Popular opinion here, maybe alongside Militao. Moves to Barcelona, gets converted to a right-back and does it really well. The kind of player who consistently gives you 7/8 out of 10. He gave us the balance even last year in Flick. But this year has been rough. He's looked at least 2 yards slower than the Koundé of old. He hasn't been able to impose himself defensively or going forward. At times, he's been the player that opposition sides have targeted to get at because his 1v1 defending and ability to defend spaces has been nowhere near the level that it once was. Now I could make excuses, or I could try and rationalise this. Koundé has played an obscene amount of minutes. He barely missed a game last year, and even this season when he's been fit, he's pretty much always played. He's a player Hansi Flick has turned to time and time again. And the minutes do add up. You know, the physical and mental fatigue is a very, very real aspect of football, and we see it time and time again. However, like I said, I am only going to be basing these grades on performances, and I don't see how I could put Koundé this season, this version of Koundé, above a D, and that's unfortunately just how it is. Right, now we're getting a little bit more positive, guys. We go on to the C's. The C's aren't the most positive category, to be fair, but at least it's not a D, you know. I'm going to start off with Balde. I think with Balde, he's a player who broke onto the scene very young, and we were all so taken aback by his physicality, by his pace, his power, his ability to hold his width, but also essentially cover the entire flank. He came in and basically sat Jordi Alba on the bench straight away. But what disappoints me with Balde is we know he has so much more to offer. You know, we know his defensive potential is remarkable. We know he has an incredible gas tank, and his straight line carrying when he gets running, it's almost impossible to stop. But at the same time, I think back to the Balde who broke onto the scene as a teenager, and I don't see improvements. You know, he's still lackluster going forward. He still lacks the IQ, the awareness to dominate certain situations, and this season has been a very mixed bag for him, I'd say. I think early on in the season, I thought he's looking good. He came back from injury, he was looking fast, he was looking sharp, taking responsibility. But as the season progressed, I thought he faded consistently and considerably, and now he's found himself in a situation where he's been leapfrogged by Cancelo. I mean, let's not beat around the bush here. Flick has preferred Cancelo because he's just looked the more productive player for the system. Now, what I will say here is Balde arguably has the most demanding role in the squad with Pedri. He basically has to hold his width, act as an auxiliary left winger, but also track back and mitigate those countless counter-attacks the system suffers just because of the nature of it. So it's a very demanding role, and I don't think Balde is the player yet to be able to carry both our offensive and defensive duties on a single flank. He's basically covering the entire flank. I do think he'd be much better suited with a winger who hugs the touchline a little bit more, because Balde actually plays much better when he's inverting and when he's running into those spaces. So that's just my little 2 cents here, but again, I think it's very difficult to put Balde above a C for this video. Robert Lewandowski next, guys. I mean, look, there's nothing to say here. Lewandowski has been an incredible servant to the club. He scored more goals and been more productive than I could have ever imagined. The bloke is almost 38 now. His longevity is already exceptional, and we have to just contend with reality here. He is declining, and that is completely natural. Most of the C's are a bit negative, but in Lewandowski's case, I think it's commendable that he's still finding himself in situations where he is being able to score goals. His goals per game ratio is incredible, but when you watch him play, he's clearly out of sorts physically. He can't play full 90s. He can't assert himself physically, especially, which means he can't dominate the box like he once used to. Of course, he can't be productive in the press. So just natural limitations you get with age. And I of course think this is the right time to move on, but a legend of the club for me, and it's going to be great to see him move on with another trophy in his bag. Next up is our other striker, Ferran Torres. Now this is a tricky one because a C does feel a bit harsh for Ferran given how he started the season. I think he took us all by surprise. He established himself as pretty much Flick's go-to starter. He was scoring goals at a tremendous rate. He'd hit 18 or 17 goals by the new year. And he looked in great shape. And then reality struck. We started seeing the Ferran Torres of old. As soon as 2026 approached, he didn't score a goal for months, literally. His best performance was the Atleti performance in the Champions League, which came after pretty much 3 months into the new year. And it's really disappointing. This is what pushes me to where to see, because when he stagnated, when he regressed, was when we needed him the most. It was very difficult for us to go into the business end of the season, essentially, without our striker firing, without our striker in good shape. And I think it's a shame, because with Lewandowski on his way out, Varane had the perfect opportunity to go out there and prove to the world that he is that guy who can take over, who could be the starting striker. But he flat out to deceive at the end of the day. And I still think he's a great squad player. I still think Ferran Torres will always be in demand by some of the best sides in the world, just because he's a valuable profile as a backup at least. And I think he is someone we could get good money for. But I don't think he's ever going to be good enough to start for FC Barcelona. And the second half of this season has been a good insight into his level for me, and it is C tier. Moving on to the Bs, guys. Now this is where I want you to go back to what I said before. My grades are standardized, but how I talk about certain players is of course relative. So B for me is solid. B is you've had a good season, you've done well, and we're happy to have you. I'm happy to have you. And the first player I want to talk about is someone who's blocked me on Twitter, as someone who I've been extremely vocal about. I said he wasn't good enough from his first few games for the club. It is Mr. Jared Martin. I sit here extremely happy to tell you that I was wrong, that Jared Martin has developed tremendously, that he's had an incredible season for his own standards, which I didn't know were so high. I think if you'd asked me the start of the season, I thought there was no chance Martin would have a role to play, but now he's been moved to centre back, a role he played in his youth days, and he looks a very handy squad player and a very handy LCB option. I think he's come into the side when we've needed him the most, because Eric Garcia's had to cover for Koundé at right back, and Martin's had to play some of the biggest games of the season. He's had to play the Champions League. He's had to come across sides that really target him, that really expose defenders who aren't meant to be there. And Martin has looked like he belongs. And that's incredible. I think he can keep improving. I think he can keep growing. Of course, there are situations where he looks a little bit vulnerable, but who doesn't in this high line? For the most part, it's been a incredibly encouraging season for Martin, and he's gone up in my stock tremendously. Not that it matters, but huge respect for him, and there is absolutely no doubt that he belongs, and he is at the very least, important squad player for us going forward. Next up, guys, is Dani Olmo. I've given him a B as well. I'm not as positive about Olmo's B, because he is a very confusing player. There have been times this season where I've watched him and I'm like, wow, what a player. The way he dominates the half space, the way he links up the play, is the perfect bridge between attack and midfield. He scored important goals. He's made important contributions, and there've just been times where he's looked so good. And then the week passes and he looks a shadow of the player we saw last week. He doesn't take responsibility, doesn't work hard, just hides. And that is a little bit unacceptable for a signing who's come in for a lot of money. And I think this season, in a way, is also a little bit more disappointing, because he has been fit. He has been fit for a large part of the season. He's made 44 appearances. But I think it's sometimes been very good and sometimes been very bad. Play the good too, if you know what I mean. But I just want more from Dani Olmo, and I know he can give us more. I think he has the potential to be much more than he is, but at this stage of his career, he's in his prime. He's not a prospect anymore, and if he does have more to give, he's going to start have to showing it and showing it very fast. Until then, until the inconsistencies stay a recurring theme, I think it's very difficult to justify the price tag that he came for. Next up, guys, is Marcus Rashford. I've given him a B as well now. It does not look like Barcelona are going to be keeping Rashford. It does not look like we're going to pay his 30 million buyout or purchase option. And that's mostly down to his very hefty wages. But if you look at Rashford's time as a loan signing, someone who came in when we desperately needed a left winger, someone who can back up Rafinha, and someone who's had to play way more than expected because of Rafinha's injury issues. I think Rashford's come in and done a very respectable job, especially in the Champions League. Early on, he was leading our numbers for goals and assists. He's often looked encouraging, and he's made important contributions. But, you know, like someone like Olmo, you see the potential with Rashford, you see how good he can be, but then you see him overcomplicating things, you see him making the wrong decisions, you see him playing like a young prospect, not someone who's made over 400 professional appearances. And that kind of puts me off a little bit as well. Overall, I think if we have to assess his loan stint, has been very promising, but I do think it's the right decision not to keep him on. I think we could go for someone younger and someone a bit more developmental, and way cheaper in terms of wages, which gives us more financial flexibility with FFP. So yes, a B tier for Rashford, very solid season, but not quite enough to warrant the financial package for me. Next up is what Jules Koundé should have been. Eric Garcia, someone who has been one of our most important players, someone who's transcended beyond a mere squad player, someone who's become one of the first names on Flick's team sheet. No matter where he plays, he's done a job at centre-back, looked great. He's done the job at right-back, looked like he belongs. And he's even had to do the job in the midfield ahead of a natural midfielder in Marcus Rashford. That is not where I would have Eric Garcia. I hope he never has to play in the midfield going forward, but having him fill in wherever needed has been so important. It's been one of the main reasons we've gone ahead and been so efficient in the league. I think he's been the squad player of dreams, and there's no doubt in my mind that he gets an A. We've moved on to the A nows, and Eric Garcia is undoubtedly an A. And I'm so happy for him because he hasn't had the conventional path of a La Masia prospect. He hasn't based on the scene like Lamine or even Gavi or Bernal or Koulibaly. He's had to do it the hard way. He's had to make his way. He's had to go out on loan, and almost no one comes back from a loan at FC Barcelona and establishes themselves as regulars. But full credit to Eric Garcia. I'm so happy that one of our own has risen to the occasion the way he has, and he's been one of our most important players in this title. Not going to say victory, but in this title charge at least. Moving on is Rafinha. I was almost a B for Rafinha just because he hasn't played enough, and I was a bit salty about the fact that he went and picked up that injury in a meaningless friendly, but you know, I did say I'm going to only be basing this on performances. And guys, the fact is Rafinha makes this side tick. He is undoubtedly one of the most important players in this system. He struggled with injuries consistently. He's missed over 20 games this season, but when fit, and I don't think he's been 100% at any point this season. No, I don't think he's been 100% once. He's always been either coming back from injury or overworking himself after coming back from injury. But he's the kind of player that we cannot survive without. You know, for a side that presses from the front, for a side that's so reliant on potency and efficiency, Rafinha is the perfect Hansi Flick player. And there's no doubt when Flick talks about him like he is his favourite. And I think he is, rightly so. I think if Rafinha was fit, was even 80% fit, or even played 80% of the season, I think we would have been in all competitions. I think if he was fit for the Atletico game, we would have won that game. Of course, all hypotheticals now, but he still has 19 goals in 31 appearances this season with all the assists. He's still been so potent when available, and he's done so while carrying persistent injuries. There's no doubt in my mind Rafinha has to be an A at least, and he is one of those A+ players when fit, just one of the best in the world, and I'm just so upset that he couldn't contribute when we needed him the most because of those recurring injuries, unfortunately. Next up, guys, is Pau Kubasi. I'm not going to waste much time here. Pau Kubasi is generational. Yes, there have been times, especially early on in the season, where he looked out of place, but think about it. This is a 16-year-old kid who first broke onto scene when he was 16, sorry, not 16 anymore, but he came in when this side was an absolute disaster, and he basically never left. Now, centre-back is a position where experience matters beyond all else. Players usually grow with age, they refine their craft, and they look better versions of themselves. But Kubasi, since 16, has looked like someone who's been playing for 5-10 years at the highest level, and he continues to be that player. I think he started the season a little bit rough, closer to the B grade, but then he just established himself and he started dominating. And I think these past few months, especially since New Year, opposite to someone like Ferran Torres, has been the best of Pau Kubasi. And it's so incredible that now he's had to basically lead this back line as a teenager. I don't think we've ever seen that before at this level, and it's just completely generational. For me, he is someone we're going to be building around for the next decade and more, and he's just a staple at the back for me. An easy A for Kubasi. Next, guys, is Fermin Lopez. Fermin also gets an A. This has been his most productive season by far. He, of course, there are times where Fermin sometimes shows his lack of experience. He gets overexcited, he takes the wrong decision, but he never hides. And for me, this is the biggest difference between an Olmo in B and a Fermin in A. Aside from the output, which Fermin has the best output as an attacking midfielder in the world alongside Bruno Fernandes. He's had a magnificent season in terms of numbers, but what sets Fermin apart is he always takes responsibility. He always inserts himself into the game, whether it's off the ball with the press, with the intensity, with the tenacity, or it's on the ball, making relentless runs in behind, coming in deep as well. I think this season he's really refined his associative game, and he never hides. And he can be a player who is a bit of a moments player, who might get 10 things wrong, but he keeps trying. It's a numbers game. He gets one thing right, and the potency, the ball striking, the attacking attributes carry him. And I think Olmo has the same attacking attributes. At least he has the difference-making attributes, but he does not turn to them as consistently and as relentlessly as Fermin Lopez. I think one word to describe Fermin is absolutely relentless. And yeah, an easy A as well for me. Now, guys, we move on to the all-elusive A+. Now, A+ is reserved for, in my opinion, our 4 best players this season. Starting off, Lamine Yamal. He is almost in a tier of his own. I wouldn't say A+, call it the Lamine tier, call it the Lamine grade, because he has been by far our best player. It boggles my mind that he was already the best player in the world last season, and I think he's gone up levels this season, and he's done so battling Pobelgia for the first half of the season, which leaves even great players lost. You know, it happened with Cole Palmer, it happened with Nico Williams, it happened with Esteban. They've been nowhere near the levels that they needed to this year. But Lamine Yamal, the freak that he is, the anomaly that he is, has found a way to overcome all those injuries, both physically and mentally, because it is a very mental injury as well. And he's done so and become so much more equipped as a footballer. I think he's one of the best playmakers I've already ever seen, one of the best footballers I've ever seen, and one of the best footballers I ever will see. And I don't say this lightly, but at 18, the levels that Lamine showed, especially again in the second half of the season when we've needed him the most, he's come out and produced levels you're just in awe of, and levels that make you feel grateful and privileged to be a fan of this special football club and this special footballer. And yes, Lamine Yamal gets a Lamine. You know, it is just a class above, and he has been our best player by a distance. Next up, guys, is John Garcia. I think if Lamine Yamal is our most influential player, I think John is second this season in La Liga especially. He leads the way for clean sheets in a Hansi Flick system. He's kept 14 clean sheets. Over 50% of his appearances have ended in clean sheets, and without him, I don't think kept a single clean sheet, or kept only one clean sheet. He leads the way in save percentages, almost 80%. He leads the way in goals prevented, 10, considerably so. And these were all things he led the way in last season as well. So it's not just a one-off with John. He's been the best goalkeeper in Spain, undisputedly, for the past 2 seasons now. And frankly, there is no way we would be in the position we're in right now. We may have still been ahead, but there's no way we would have been 9 points ahead with a game in hand without John Garcia. That's impossible. So an easy A+ and one of our most important signings for the next decade and more, in my opinion. And I'm so grateful he's ours. Next up, guys, I'm going to do a bit of a joint one here, also because the video is dragging on, and also because I think these two just belong together. You already know it's Pedri and Frankie. Now, I want to talk of them together because I think that would just be the right way to do this. They're meant to be together. They're two pillars of this side. They're the beating heart of the midfield, and I don't think we can play without them. One of my favorite parts of the Hansi Flick system, they complement each other to perfection, and I think when they're together, we can beat and go toe-to-toe with any side in the world. Unfortunately, what's happened is Frankie has picked up injuries, Pedri has picked up injuries, and they haven't played together nearly as much as we needed them to. With Pedri especially, people might note that he did drop off towards the end of the season. He was easily the best midfielder in the world for me in the first half of the season. But if you look at his roles, Frankie and Pedri, both of their roles, they cover outright the two most amount of ground in the squad, right? Frankie covers over 12 kilometers a game. Pedri covers over 13 kilometers a game. The roles are so demanding that the burnout and the physical decline towards the end of the season is almost inevitable. And I know I said I will only factor performances, but in this case, it's been so blatant for Pedri and Frankie, but Pedri especially, that it's very hard for me to hold these past few weeks against him, because you remember he was injured. We had to force him back because we'd lost 4-0 to Atletico in the first leg. He comes back, dominates the game against Villarreal. We were 2-1 up. Pedri comes in, changes the entire game. Then we go to Atletico. Atletico come to Barcelona. We almost pull off the comeback from 4-0 down, and Pedri played one of the best games I have ever seen live in my entire life. I was in the stadium and I was in awe. He left so much on the pitch that day. I think it probably did him damage for the entirety of the season. He's looked so tired. He's looked out on his legs, but he's just given so much to this side. And I think the impact he already made in those first 7-8 months of the season was so immense that he has to be an A+ for me. And Frankie, similarly, without Frankie, Pedri isn't the same player. And without Pedri, Frankie isn't the same player. They just belong together, which is why I'm doing this the same way. You could argue about who's more important. I don't want to get into it, but I can tell you that both of them are fundamental and foundational to everything we do, and that will be the case for a long time ahead. And my A+ tier ends there, guys, and that is also the entire video. It's been a bit tricky. It's been a bit tricky and a bit harsh sometimes, but I do hope you guys liked it. You guys took a bit of insight from this. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section, and do let me know what I got right and especially what I got wrong. And beyond that, guys, please do subscribe. My views and interactions and impressions have been so encouraging. It gives me so much more motivation and credibility to go ahead and do videos like the Victor Font interview, which was so surreal, and the support is always heartwarming. But I hope you guys keep going, keep enjoying the videos, and give me the ability to make bigger and better videos with each passing day. And until next time, cheers.